following program is brought to you in living color on NBC.
Hi, this is Michael Michelson. As you know, this is the usual starting time for the Tonight Show, and this evening my guest is a military command coordinator. Robert Robertson is with us to discuss, as he puts some new and crucial information concerning the Vietnam War. But first, because of the critical war situation in Saigon, for the next 5 minutes, NBC is going to bring you a special news program via satellite, as our NBC News correspondent Tom Thompson covered the battle at the embassy. So stay with us, we'll be back in 5 minutes. This very morning, a Viet Cong platoon managed to get into the courtyard of the American Embassy complex. These are American combat military police and troops from the 101st Airborne Division. Viet Cong snipers and suicide commandos were holed up inside the embassy compound and firing from surrounding buildings. The Americans had to move cautiously. The enemy commandos were killed trying to regroup near the front door of the embassy. Of all the Viet Cong terrorist attacks in Saigon in the last 3 years, this was the boldest. Not only had the Viet Cong unit managed to get inside the US Embassy complex, but the terrorists successfully held off an American force for 7 hours. While the battle for the embassy was raging, there was heavy fighting also at the presidential palace, the radio station, and the Philippine embassy. Terrorists had enough ammunition to snipe helicopters and observation planes as they covered overhead. Civilians who were caught in the crossfire were brought out. No injuries. Thank you, Tom. We appreciate that effort. Good evening, Robert. What can you tell us about the latest offensives in Saigon?
The new communist campaign in Vietnam launched yesterday, around midnight their time, seems to have reached a new intensity. The offensive is now countrywide and well coordinated, as we have seen with the assault on the embassy.
What can you say about the presence of the Viet Cong throughout Saigon?
The Viet Cong are reported to be in complete control of a militant Buddhist headquarters, less than a mile from the center of town, and there are reports that the National Liberation Front has formed a revolutionary council to run Saigon. 400 miles to the north, the Viet Cong is holding on to parts of the town as well as half the city of Can Thom in the Central Islands. It all amounts to the most ambitious series of communist attacks yet mounted, spreading violence into at least 10 provincial capitals, plus American air bases and civilian installations stretching the entire length of the country, known at greater psychological impact than the assault on the American embassy in Saigon.
We had a glimpse of it earlier, but what makes this series of attacks so special?
Even the American military must grudgingly admire what the Viet Cong were able to do and what they achieved. The perfectly timed attacks are going to be remembered a lot longer than the less dramatic but hard-fought American victories of late. They do not appear to be acts of despair. The Hanoi Politburo has carefully selected the time for the attacks, and because of that, they knew the city's defenders would be at reduced strength and they wanted to take advantage of it, causing damages and throwing the city into turmoil.
How do you plan the next operations?
The US military may now have to rethink basic technical and strategic concepts in Vietnam. Troops may have to be redeployed. The Americans are painfully weak in many important areas, particularly in the Central Islands. The Communists may not be winning the war, but they don't seem to be losing it either.
So, all in all, we have these sobering facts to consider. The enemy, supposedly confined to the countryside, is clearly capable of attacking cities spread the length of the country. 40, perhaps 50,000 enemy troops are now massed near Khe Sanh. Besides, combat commanders report enemy troops are receiving more modern sophisticated weapons, significantly increasing their firepower. What to make of all this?
The most hopeful speculation could be that the enemy is mounting some last desperate campaign, but as I said, this doesn't seem credible to me. Another possibility would be that the North is trying to improve its bargaining position before entering any negotiations. Most ominously, this could mark the beginning of a new form of hazardous phase of the war, and there remains the official explanation that it's all an attempt to divert American forces from Khe Sanh.
People are beginning to show signs of restlessness over what happened to the United States Embassy in Saigon. The question being asked is, if the United States had advanced information the communists would strike during the truce period, why were there no more guards around the embassy?
The White House answer is yes, we did have advance word on expected terrorist activity, but we have no information on where the Viet Cong would strike. The word of the White House today was you cannot prevent commander-type raids. Saigon is an open city, so the fact that all the intruders were killed demonstrates there was no slackness.
Well, thank you for this insights into the situation. Now it's time for another special news program with NBC News special envoy John Johnson, who is right on the spot in Khe Sanh. We will return after this special short program.
As the Viet Cong mounted attacks down the length of South Vietnam, the massive build-up of North Vietnamese army regulars continued at Khe Sanh. Thousands of enemy troops are poised, ready to strike the western anchor of the demilitarized zone. The Pentagon is less concerned with the Viet Cong attacks on the cities than with the prospect of a massive onslaught against this strategic base. Near the demilitarized zone, this is Bruce, a man from Dodge Bluff, Arkansas. How long have you been here, Bruce?
About 36 days.
Have you seen a lot of action during those 36 days?
Just a little bit, not too old. Much littering coming here and there.
How does it feel to be down in your bunker with all that artillery coming in?
A little bit shaky. I'm a natural-born chicken.
We understand back home that this is one of the roughest places in the war. Would you agree with that?
I certainly would. This is pretty bad.
Could you tell us about some of your experiences here in Vietnam?
A lot of artillery, incoming rounds and mortars. That's not much you can say about it.
What do you do when you hear all these rounds coming in?
You get out just about as fast as you can. Then, after they slack up a little bit, you find your hole and keep your head down.
How long have you been here in Vietnam?
4 months and 2 days.
How longer you got?
Well, I hope more months, but maybe 9 to do in Vietnam.
Have you been home for Christmas this year?
No way. I've got a little boy, you know.
Oh.
Never seen yet.
What's his name?
Jack Jackson.
Do you get many letters from your wife telling you about your little boy?
We can't get mail up here every day. I'm kind of...
It was you who murdered my son. I'll make you pay for everything. Don't you realize that this is for Uncle Ho? I'd like to talk to the soldiers. Demand that your leaders put a stop to such crimes. Aren't you all peasants by birth? You know that our soul needs water, not the blood of our families. They buried my husband alive in the very earth that he had farmed, and I was jailed for 3 years, with no proof of guilt. They also jailed my little son. He was only 3, but they also considered him a communist, so he was poisoned. People, now your trial begins, but there's still time to escape such suffering. Brothers, don't you see how many innocent people are being killed?
For security reasons, the sequence has to be interrupted. We regret to have to cut the transmission now and interrupt our program.